Hello and welcome again to another class in PCR118, Introduction to Migration and Globalization. Again, I am Akim Ibikunle Tijani, your instructor. In the previous class, we learned about the multidimensional nature of migration and also the components of globalization. We attempt definitions of the two keywords, and then we arrive at that convergence between the two, and then explain the nexus that connects both as an important phenomenon in the development of the human race. I do believe you've completed the assignment, and I do believe that you posted your views based on the readings on the in the chat room. I will meet you there so that we can continue to learn from one another. But today we are focusing on yet another topics. As highlighted, we will look at sources and the historiographical debate. We will look at history, geography, and the environment. And what exactly is the connection and the relevance of this as we study migration and globalization in the context of peace studies and conflict resolution, which is the degree pathway for all of them. Let's focus first on historiography. Historiography because it's important for you to understand the sources. I've assigned readings to you, and you by now have seen the varieties and divergent opinions among scholars, even concerning what you think is so simple, that is the definition of migration, the definition of globalization, the push and pull factors, etc., etc. That is what we call historiography. It is the art and science of writing about issues, about events, about personalities, to make a meaningful contribution to knowledge and to the society and to the global community as a whole. Historiography has to do with the unbiased analysis, objective analysis. But for us to arrive at writing an intelligent, unbiased, objective essay, like some of those that I assigned in the previous class, you will have to make use of the sources. You will have to consult. Just like the policeman trying to unravel a case, a situation, you will have to consult your sources. And then by consulting the various sources available to you, you now start writing. So sources and useful adaptation and analysis of such sources are important in peace studies and conflict resolution, and indeed in this particular course, and in all disciplines. So you ask the question, what are the sources available to me as a scholar? What are the sources available to you as a student? Okay, an upcoming scholar. First and foremost, you think about the aura source. Aura. What What do we mean by aura? Aura means talking to one another. What a scholar called tolerating one another. So when you do the talk, when you ask the question, when you probe into that past and present by talking to individuals, talking to groups, talking to the corporate entities, and combing all those orality when it comes to the past and immediate present, then you are utilizing oral sources. But there are two components of oral sources. One is oral tradition. The other one is oral history. Okay. Again, oral tradition and oral history, and I want you to take note of that. Oral tradition is useful, usable, because of the absence of writing, the act of writing in most African communities. And given our environment, given our location in Africa, in Nigeria, in Abuja, then oral tradition becomes so important. But oral traditions are usually used to dissect the past, the period when Africans were not putting down in writing like the Europeans. So the absence of writing does not mean that Africans have no sense of history and they cannot reflect on their past. Oral tradition is well guided. It's not just anybody talking. It's a scientific, if we can put it that way, rendition of the past. And that is how we got to know about the many events that predate Europeans and even Europeans' encounter with Africans generally. What about oral history? Oral history is contemporary. Is that interview you conduct, the interview I conduct, okay? And then synergize the views of one person and the other based on the same topic. And then we start writing. Of course, it could lead also to historiographical debate. And then you can see the connection, you can see the nexus. And that is why we are discussing sources and historiographical debate. The second source that we use is the archival and by extension library sources. Archival records are also very important in our various archives. Companies keep documents in archives. Today, you can talk about digitization. Digitization of archival documents has come to stay. It has come to reflect upon the technological advancement, and it remain and will remain useful in our study of events, issues concerning migration and globalization. Libraries also have gone digital, but we still have in the archives and the libraries written records, diaries, books, published in the past and in the present, and they are also useful. We have reports and scholarly articles, very, very useful also. Reports and scholarly articles, very useful. When you talk about the sources, it is also important to reflect on the fact that scholars do take and pay close attention to the convergence between geography and history as a source. Why? Because of the fact that there is that continuous interaction between man and woman and their environment. Geography continues to play, and by extension, the environment continues to play important role, either in forced migration or voluntary migration. Geography and the environment continue to play important role in globalization and its consequences, and of course the debate arising therefrom. Geography, as we all know, is the study of people and their environment and the resources available to them. Take a step back and reflect on the climatic change, for instance, and its effect on global politics and development. Take a step back on desertification. Take a step back on plastics taking over the lagoons and the oceans. And take a step back on flooding and its consequences. In historic times, environment degradation, the need for arable land has impacted migration, as we will study in the case of the Bantu migration in Africa. In recent past, we have debates all the way to the United Nations and leaders of the world talking about the relevance of the climate, the environment, and geography generally to the sustenance and survival of humanity. So it is very, very important for us to take note of those as we probe into various sources. So scholarly articles and reports in that realm are useful in writing of migration issue in this context. So let us move on and then take a closer look at the issues that I've raised at the beginning of this class. Historiographical debate. We want to be specific now. In the previous class, we gave varieties of definitions about migration. But what actually came up is the fussiness, what I call the fussiness in methodology. Methodology in terms of how do I collect, how do I research, and how do I write. Take for instance about the IDP, internally displaced person. Okay? Am I writing as an independent scholar? Am I using ethnographic methods? Am I just relying on those newspaper reports or the social media reports that are at best not the whole truth? What exactly is the best methodology one can employ? I can tell you that The methodology you use is also a reflection of your school of thought. Are you Eurocentric? Are you Afrocentric? Are you ideological? Are you not ideological? These issues will affect the objectivity of your writing about the issues at hand, with consequences such as positive and, of course, negative reports, such as developing your own spider webs of scholars that may spread ideological or philosophical as opposed to objective historiographical writing. I've also mentioned the relevance of history, geography, and the environment. Let us also be specific now for your comprehension and ability to synthesize some of the issues that I have raised in this lecture. History implies knowledge and evaluation of the multidimensional nature of migration and globalization. Whether you are an economist, a sociologist, a scientist of various branch, you must have a knowledge of history, and history must impart your research. Absent of history will definitely negatively impact your conclusion. What sense does it make? If you are an educationist and you are studying pedagogy in the IDP, for instance, and then you have no sense of the composition in the camp, it will also affect your data gathering and analysis. Who are these people? Where are they from? What is the culture? What is their custom? Can they coexist? Are they from the same community being displaced and they are now in this camp? How do you understand the composition of a refugee camp in Europe, for instance? So those are important issues that the historical minds probe into. Secondly, geography. Geography in the sense that we as students, not just of migration, peace studies, but as students generally learn more by visualizing. And that is why in this course we'll be talking about map and mapping. So in the context of general knowledge, we say geography implies the visual comprehension of the location. If I talk about the Sahara, and I talk about, say, for instance, the Niger-Benue confluence, and we talk about the Bantu migration, what is their location? Why? To some extent, how is that location at the moment? What was it in the past? What is the climatic topography and ecological reasons for the wave and movement, the push out of that location around 2nd century BC and how that impact other ethnic groups down south of the Sahara. The environment, lastly, of course, is a general physical understanding considering history and geography. In recent time, we've seen how important bioenvironmental studies are to understanding migration, to analyzing globalization. But majorly, the environment remain useful. The understanding of the environment remain useful, remain inclusive as policies are being developed, and they also guide actions of actors locally and globally. At this point, I will end this lecture by also emphasizing the three components: history, geography, environment in global context. If we take a look at the European exploration and colonization that emerged at the turn of the 20th century, the Berlin Conference of the 19th century, 1884 to 85, and the consequent colonial policies and systems in various parts of Africa, the Americas, and some part of Asia, we begin to see how migration of a group, in this case Europeans, led to the change in the map of the world and the way we do things. How it led to new economic system, how it brought about global institutions, and how policies, regulations became global issues. Of course, in a post-1945 era, we begin to look at the Cold War and how this ideological difference between the two bipolar impacted the global communities. For migration, we cannot dissect it, talk about it, study it, without looking at the consequent poverty and disparities. At the same time, we cannot complete our study or understanding of migration and globalization without looking at gendering, particularly girls and women, disparities against them, whether in the IDP camps, whether as a result of banditry, whether as a result of a terrorist attack, or whether in terms of their own willingness to migrate, as we have in the current wave of African youth crossing the Sahara, crossing the Mediterranean, going to Lebanon, enslaving themselves. So to really understand the complexity of migration, we again must look at mapping, but today we will not go into that. Today we will end up by saying that the understanding of the multidimensional nature of migration and globalization is important for both local policies, actions, regional policies and actions, and international policies and actions. We cannot be unobjective despite the consequences, despite the various multidimensional nature of the issues at hand. So let us recap before we end this lecture. We have focused on sources and historiographical debates. We have focused on the relevance of history, geography, and the environment. These are built up from our previous lectures on why exactly we are in this class. What exactly is the learning outcome, or what are the learning outcomes? And what is the relevance of these in general peace studies and conflict resolution? And I believe, again, you have learned. I believe learning has occurred. And I believe we will, again, take the assignment that I'm about to share with you seriously. Let me say this for the record that PCR118, Introduction to Migration and Globalization, is a new course, a flagship course, started this year, and as such, there is no course material. So do not look for one or ask your study center for one, because it is being developed. When it is available, we will make it in both hard copy and e-copy on NOUN website. But you can get this book being highlighted on the internet. The African Diaspora, Historical Analysis, Poetic Verses, and Pedagogy, published 2011. You can get it and read it and be well informed. I think a good aspect that you want to pay attention to are the poetic verses written by students like you in a class that I taught some years back. And based on reading of the text, they were able to come up with poems, that is poetic rendition of their understanding, bringing out the critical thinking in them. And I believe you can do the same. And that is why some of the assignments I've given you is to come up with one or two poems before the end of this course. And I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Until I see you next class, remain gentle, remain cool, and stay out of our luta, but read and take notes. Bye-bye for now.